Welcome to About Her Business, the podcast where we leave all the gossip at the door and get straight down to business. I'm your host, Jonte, and today we're traveling to the country of Finland to meet the owner of Dinasaidso Studios, Miss Dina Ramsey. Now, Miss Ramsey has secured more than 15 million euros for more than 500 plus projects, and she's here today to help us play chess on what she means business. So, ladies, grab your cups and your notepads, and let's get down to it. The meeting is now in session. Welcome, Miss Ramsey.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
It's great to be here.
yes, ma'am. Are you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Perfect. So, what inspired you to focus specifically on gaming and crowdfunding marketing?
So that's a great one. I love this. So I grew up in a very conservative household where games was not really a thing. So when I got myself emancipated at like 14, what I started doing, I went into games as hard as I could. I signed up for volunteering. I worked on a role playing game that came out just a couple of years later as their editor. And ever since then, it's basically been rolling. So I dived deep into the indie scenes and started helping creators do more with what they were sort of given. And yeah, helped out on doing promos. I volunteered in a larger organization that organizes conventions all over Norway. And it was so much fun that it sort of spiraled into me going semi pro in World of Warcraft, and then I ended up working for Electronic Arts, doing like Simpsons Tapped Out and Sims and FIFA. And from there, I joined King Games for quite some time. And then I sat there sort of working for the really big guys and they were growing. And I was like, wow, but what about the small ones? Because they kind of helped me get there. So I started the studio and then I started working with smaller indie companies. And I announced it. They're like, hey, if anyone wants to work with me, this is what I can do. And it took like less than 24 hours, and I had two people who wanted to work with me, and it's been rolling ever since then.
Oh, wow. So, who knew something that was pretty much banned during your childhood would actually turn into your future career?
Right.
Now, at the beginning of today's episode, I did mention that you have secured more than 15 million euros for more than 500 plus projects. Can you name one campaign that really challenged you, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah. So very early on, it was just me, and I had a friend of mine who was a graphic designer. She would occasionally come and help in. And we got this project from a Welsh game designer. And he was very overwhelmed with everything. And he was on the spectrum. And he was like, Justina, I need help. I don't know what I need help with, but like this is the project. And he ended basically like running away from the project while it was going live. So I just looked at, okay, this is the puzzle pieces we have. And I just had to like really dive in and pretend to be him for a while and put myself in his shoes. And it was really difficult because there was so many things that had to happen. But also it challenged me to sort of what do these people actually need? And it helped me envision like what can I build my studio into? So we started hiring more people after that because I had to do everything. And felt like I was so swamped all of the time, just like, okay, now I have to do this, this, this. And every single minute of my day was just tasked out with like, I gotta do this thing and this thing. So it was really interesting to be on that project. I ended up creating like a whole choose your own adventure story for the audience to engage with during their live campaign, where we had a part of the story that was built from the game, so that they could sort of imagine playing the game a little bit with us. And they would then choose a path, and then I would create a new story for the next day. And just this amount of work that I gave myself with making a choose your own adventure story from never having written that much text before. While there was an actual author actually writing the book at the same time, based on the story from the game, it was very humbling, and I learned so much. I kept doing the choose your own adventure stories for a lot of our other clients afterwards because I gained the skills to do so. But also, like, our success as a company, just like that was the defining factor, I think.
Mhm. And again, you mentioned finding the needs for these companies. So, How do you decide which marketing strategies will resonate the most with a particular game or a project?
I usually always start looking at the game, like what are the overarching like themes and then the style of it, because that very often will tell you who it is for, who it was made for. Very often we will sit down and we will like interview basically the creators to get them to talk more, because a lot of creators will be making things that is essentially for a part of themselves. They are typically their own ideal audience, and then by sort of replicating that as your core audience, you can kind of project the creator outwards and find people who are similar.
Oh, I love it. And many entrepreneurs, they struggle with knowing where to start. How do you guide clients who may feel overwhelmed by the different options?
Overwhelm is definitely where most people find me, and they're like, "I have no idea what to do. I have a game. What's next?" They will say, and they'll be like, "Where do I go from here?" What I usually do is after we've sort of gathered in what the game is, what their goals are, like why are they doing this? Because I think that's important. Like, why do you want to ship your game out? Do you want to make 5 copies or do you want to make 1,000? It's looking at our hygiene factors. Very sort of marketing structure is our hygiene factors is always website, landing pages, newsletters, our social media presence, anything that is for the audience to see and view what we're doing. And once we sort of have all of those sorted, you can really easily start sort of building on top of those. But for the first 1 to 2 months, our job is usually just like going through all of the hygiene factors. Are you using the same intro on all of your sort of social media or websites? Are you talking the right way about your game? Are you actually presenting it yourself in a good way? And are you active on these different forums?
I love it. And I'm new to the gaming world, so I want to talk about gaming for just a minute. What is the biggest misconception game developers have about marketing their projects that you saw so far?
Mm. I think for game designers and developers, it's very much the same as anyone starting a company. Is that marketing is icky and they don't like it because it feels salesy or it feels uncomfortable to promote yourself. I think a lot of indies in general just struggle with this. In particular, I think a lot of designers do because marketing happens during conception of the game where you should be talking about like I'm making a prototype or we're playtesting thing. Well, they will very often wait until the product is completed and they have a fully playable state. Whereas other indie companies outside of gaming will very often start talking about it from conception. And this makes our job in marketing and games particularly a lot harder because we then have something that is completed and the vision is already done and we need to sell it more as a full finished product. While as a lot of the audience would like to come in while it's still being created because they like to see the glow up factor, they like to see things being completed and reiterated. So we kind of have to scale back up to what did things look like a while ago and then work from there to
And,
build the audience.
and you did mention marketing in that. So, for a lot of marketers and entrepreneurs, the first goal mine that we think to market ourselves is on social media. It's easy, it's simple. So, how do you craft content that stands out without feeling forced or gimmicky?
I think enthusiasm is the way to start. If I'm enthusiastic and I love the thing that I just made, it's a lot easier to start talking about it from that perspective. And all creators created a thing for a reason. And I think if we can just sit down and be like, why did I make it? And you really ask yourself that question, you will already know what you should be saying on socials. The trick is usually just not make it salesy, but talk about like show the enthusiasm. Don't tell people about like this is what the product is for. This is what we're gonna use it. Here's, the kind of people who should be liking it. We want to show all of these things. So you'll take lots of pictures, you'll make a video, maybe you'll talk about the creation of it. In games, I think it's a lot easier because we can lean into like how to play. and we can do a teach of like, this is the different strategies and this is the mechanics of it. And we can really sort of narrow it down to small movable parts. If you have a really cool component, that will take a lot of the focus, especially for board games and tabletop games. If you got a fancy little thing that moves, that's even better. Well as in video games, we will look at like what is the core gameplay loop, what are the characters, what's the story, and then we start from there.
Mhm. Okay. And here's another gaming word that I'm not very familiar with, and that's crowdfunding. Can you explain to our audience exactly what that is?
Yeah. So crowdfunding is basically when you're taking a project and you're seeking funds online, typically on sites like GoFundMe or Kickstarter. There's also GameFound and BackerKit nowadays. And there's a lot of different platforms that allows you to essentially pre-order its function for your item beforehand. In others industries, it's very often not considered a pre-order. Like you're doing seed funding or you're asking for angel investors. But for crowdfunding, when it comes to games, it's you're pre-ordering an item that hasn't been manufactured yet. And it's typically 1 to 3 years away from being produced.
Okay. And thank you again for sharing with our audience. So we're sticking with crowdfunding for a little bit. So how do you balance these two sides in your campaigns when it comes to creativity and precision?
I think that teams are super important, having people that is designated specific tasks. So we often try to fit in around the creators that we're working with. So our clients might come with their own team. They might come with a graphic designer and the developer, and they want to do some tasks, but not all of them. So we try to figure out what are they good at, what can we use them for, and what do they enjoy doing, and then we try to have them do more of that, and then we fit in around and do all of the other things. So clearly sort of assigning tasks. Ideation is typically done between myself and the developers, with me now having 26 years of experience in the gaming industry, which I think is insane because I'm not that old. It means that all of the larger scope things is always done between me and the developers, while as the visual creativity is sort of assigned down from like an editor will then go in and write the text. I will go in with the developer, will write notes in terms of like what kind of visuals and the larger scopes, what are we trying to do? We'll send it over to our graphic designer who will then create the vision. He'll show it and we'll make some comments and it's like we'll go back and forth, but the sort of the overarching is always held in my head. I have this amazing ADHD brain that just understands sometimes what their developers are wanting to do and what we need to make things look like. And I'm so lucky to have been able to create a team in around that to just basically make the things that my brain sees as like, this is the way to do things.
Mhm. I love it. And again, creating the team, assigning those tasks, making those necessary adjustments is how we become successful. So I want to talk about a small adjustment in a campaign that had a huge impact on results. Can you talk about one of those for a minute?
We had a game a couple of years ago that it was a dog themed zombie game. So there was a bunch of dogs that were running around and it was killing off zombies and saving the people. And we were sort of working with typically we will be like people who are interested in crowdfunding and then people who are interested in games is typically like the start of our funnel audience. But for this one, we found that it wasn't working as easily because about 46% of gamers has a dog, but there are more cat people, so we're like, "Oh, no." So what we started doing instead was that we sort of flipped the script a little bit with this campaign, and we went for people who were, dog people and influencers who of dogs. And we wrote to a bunch of dog creators and asked if they wanted to like try the game and play the game. And we worked with no kill shelters all over the US where we were like, hey, we have this game. We'd love to like showcase what kind of dogs you have currently. We're up for adoption, and we ran a whole campaign in around Adoption Day because it fit really nicely 2 weeks prior to launching our campaign. And I sat there editing all of these videos because we got so many pictures of really, really cute dogs one of the shelters we worked with, they did a whole photo shoot day and they invited a local photographer over. And I was putting like this music from Friends over it, that I will be there for you with all of the dogs. And I was like, I was sitting there like crying and trying to keep my tears back. So like it was such an emotional campaign to work on. And we were getting stories from people who've had their dogs pass away and they got the opportunity to like put their dogs' pictures inside the game to sort of memorialize them and then play with their dogs one last time. So we were getting all of these stories, and emotionally it was one of the hardest campaigns I've ever worked on. And we still go out at convention to have people talk about their experience playing this game with their forever dogs in it. And it's like I get so emotional over this one every single time I meet people who talk about it. So that was really tough just emotionally, but also because we needed to flip the script on how we were gaining our audience and how we were communicating. But it changed everything. That campaign did more than we were sort of expecting it to be doing, and the player feedback was a lot higher than we typically get on campaigns. And we have people like still today, it's been 3, 4 years now since it launched, who still talk about it.
Oh, wow. Thank you for us. I too am a animal lover, and do you mind sharing exactly what the name of the game is with our audience?
Yeah, it's called Good Dog, Bad Zombie.
Good dog, bad zombie. And where
Yeah.
can
So Good Dog, Bad Zombie is available from the Tessa Collective websites all over the States. It's also available at a couple of no-kill shelters in their shops.
okay. And again, thank you for sharing with our audience because I am animal lover, so you had me completely just happy our time while you were sharing. Now, we've talked about teams consistently throughout our conversation today. How do you approach working with teams that are more focused on the game itself rather than marketing?
That's like the big ticket, isn't it? Because I have to make things more marketable. And very often we'll have creators who have so much passion and that have existing teams that are really interested in doing things. So I find that very often I'll take a teacher role in the beginning and I'll teach them about social media. And I'll be like, this is great. I love your enthusiasm, but like, let's make it marketable and be like, let's steer them sort of gently in the right direction. So I very often find that I sort of resort to doing a lot of running a lot of teaching. And obviously, some parts of what I do is consulting based. So I'll pick out specific team members and we'll sit down for an hour to just go through like the social media 101s. This is how the algorithm works. This is, the kind of content that works, and giving them a list and sort of walking them through like this is how Instagram likes their pictures, or this is the kind of content we should be doing, like one reel, one slideshow, one static image a week at least, and then sort of trying to hand it slowly back over to them to take agency in the task.
And I want to stay in the marketing aspect of this conversation for just a moment. There are different ways you can go about marketing a business, but I want to talk about storytelling marketing for a second. What role do you believe that storytelling plays in launching a successful crowdfunding campaign?
About 90% of our sales pitch when we're doing in games is story. Another part of it is probably like the visual presentation of it. Because at this point, people don't know how it plays. They don't know how it fits into their lives beyond, the size of the box, which is again a visual presentation. So I think there's overarching story both of the game itself in terms of like storyline, but also the story that's being told by through its visual presentation is so important because you're building a red thread through your advertising, through your website, your social media. It should contain sort of the same voice, same story being told throughout, so that by the time they're getting the product, they feel like they already know it. Very often when we're sort of looking through the storyline and the concept of the games, we try to find ways to emphasize the stories that are hidden within the story, the overarching, so that people get these small little tidbits that they can hook onto, so that we can let that sort of guide the audience through the process of, acquiring the game and feeling it sort of come alive.
I love that. And again, because of the current marketing trends that are out there, you would think that everything would be more visual versus storytelling. But in the gaming world, it seems to be a shift. So, are there any current marketing trends in the gaming space that you feel are overhyped and underrated?
I find it's hard because, like, what do we really consider to be marketing trends? Like, there are social trends, and then there is gaming trends. I am very much over pirates at this point. There's been a lot of them. Remember counting last year around this time, Cannes had just finished, which is one of the larger gaming conventions, and we have like Gen Con and stuff from the US. And we were counting through like the announced releases over the year, and we were looking at maybe like 70 of them being water themed, being like ocean animals or pirates. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of titles within this very small niche. And to compare, same year we had like 8 games about turtles. This- or there was 17 games being announced just within the first quarter that was about the stars specifically. And I think when we sort of look at trends, maybe for me at least, it's like what theme is the games? It's probably the themes I sort of get a bit tired of. Like right now, it looks like war games is back on. And it's probably because of like the political landscape where it is currently is a good indicator as to where our interests are gonna sort of divert and where our attention goes to. So in order to cope better with the current state of the world, playing more games is a good way to sort of distance yourself and disassociate from what is actually happening. And we see this very clearly in the gaming and entertainment industry overall. This sort of detachment from what is currently happening is very much impacting our purchasing power and what kind of games we're looking for. So right now in entertainment, for example, on Netflix, obviously we have the Bridgertons, which means that next year we're gonna see, or later this year already, we're gonna see more of the Regency games coming back. And they started a lot with the like Victorian games last year and the year before that. We're sort of gaining more and more interest, which is always a good recession indicator for us. The more cozy and historical things become, is something that sort of allows us to distance ourselves from our current day-to-day lives and allow us to dream a little bit and imagine things that are either simpler, easier, or just happier times.
Wow. And again, thank you for sharing because I am a person that is new to the gaming world. And I had absolutely no idea that even games went based off of shows and, current trends that are out there. So again, thank you for sharing that with our audience. Now,
Yeah.
you also host workshops and consultations. What is a common aha moment for your clients to experience during these sessions?
I think it's probably the layering of strategies. You'll start doing like I was telling earlier, we want to start with our hygiene factors. And very often people will like, but why? Like I want to do this thing. And I'm like, we can't yet. And it doesn't happen until later when we're actually at the next stage and we're doing the thing that they really wanted to do, whatever it was that it was like in their mind that we should start with, that they'll realize that this is why we did it. So it will be like, ah, so that's why you wanted us to set up the newsletter before we announced the project. That makes sense because then you're capturing organic leads. Or, all right, that makes sense to capture our socials before we go on a conventions because that means that we can talk about us going to the convention before we even there. And I think it's basically like a lot of the time the aha moment sits in the layering. Like, where do you start to build your marketing and your awareness? It is in small little steps, and once you get to the larger steps, it's like a lot of people be like, "Oh, that was really smart. We did that 4 months ago."
I love it. And again, we're keeping on to that expert side. I want you to share with women entrepreneurs that may be interested in the tech or gaming industry, what's one lesson from your experience that stands out most to you?
I think to unapologetically you, to sort of stay in the space and don't change yourself for what other people want you to be. That it's a lot easier to find people and make friends in a new industry or yeah, any industry really if you know who you are and keep that really true to you and not changing it. Because if you start bending who you are for others, there's no saying where you'll end up, and you might hate yourself in the process. And loving yourself is so important, especially when you run a business, that having that strength with yourself and just using that to just stay in the space and taking up the space that is needed for you to exist. I think another thing that really helps is finding a similar mentor. I found a female mentor really early on in my process that helped me tremendously. She was able to sort of point out flaws in our strategy thinking super early, meant that we didn't have problems later on.
Mhm. I love that. That was some really great advice. And I love how you also included the mentor in it as well, because sometimes it does take working along with someone who may be experienced in the field just to get that insight and build those skills.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing. So I still want to stay on the expert side. And I want to get your opinion on how you measure success beyond just the numbers raised in crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah. When I started the company, I really had this idea that I needed to make 5 million in under 5 years. That was like my big goal because I'd seen another company who had done that. And I was like, well, I can't be worse than that. There were 2 women who and in a different industry who started. I don't remember their names anymore because this is 7 years ago at this point. But for me, it was like, I'm gonna do that. So I set out to sort of defining my success in how much I was able to raise. And while I was doing that, I got to, like, hire more people, and I got to see, I made friends with the people I hired, and I created this really nice dense team of 5 people who are fully reliant on the work that I bring in and my names bring in to the industry to sort of like have their own livelihood. And I've seen, one of our team members recently had a baby and she went on maternity leave and we were able to support her through that. And now that she's sort of ready to pick up small tasks, we can kind of work around her own schedule. And I started the company when I had a little baby and I was just out of maternity leave myself. So for me, it was really important to being able to work in around his schedule. So for me, success became sort of being able to successfully now having worked for 7 years in around my son's special needs and being there, being a mom and sort of doing the work when he's at school or at kindergarten and when he goes to bed. My first hire was also right out of maternity leave. And her kid is starting school now, and it's fantastic to see. Just, I've seen this baby grow up. She was tiny little tots running around and gapping in the background on our first meetings and just finding the balance between sort of all, the 3 of us now being moms in the team and our sort of our token guy and our graphic designer who is absolutely amazing. We hired him after he was working with us as an internship for 3 months, and we're like, "You're really good." Like, he understood the assignment, and he's been with us ever since, and now he has grown so much in his skills, and he is, it's amazing to see. So for me now, success has been, giving other parents the opportunity to find a work balance that fits their lifestyle, but also giving them the space and the grace of, like, being flexible because we are so flexible with our clients and their needs. And when they're having a bad mental day, we are there for them, but we're only able to do that because we do the same thing for our team members.
I love that. And again, thank you for sharing because you tend to forget about those small moments of where you started and now you're becoming mothers. You forget all those small moments, and here we are, 15 euros later. And again, I want to congratulate you on all your accomplishments. we always leave with a legacy. And I will give you a few moments to think about this. Looking ahead, how do you see marketing in the gaming and crowdfunding industry evolving over the next 5 years?
I think it's definitely going to continue. So, the last couple of years, we've started to see that because there's a saturation of games available. There is several thousand titles now being released every single year, and it used to be like 1,500 a year on a global scale. And we've far surpassed this number. It is partially, due to people like me who work in games and helps indie creators be successful in the online space, but it is becoming a numbers game. It is harder to sort of stand out in among the crowds, and that means that while we used to work on tiny little budgets and absolutely knock them out of the park in crowdfunding, it's now harder to push through and advertising and finding your audience. It's harder to sort of be visible in a very crowded space. So unless people have sort of the budgets, it becomes sort of like it's squeezing itself out. So the threshold is increasing, and I'm afraid that we're going to keep seeing this for quite some time until the sort of the market stabilizes a little. For as long as we can, we're going to keep pushing for indies to take up the space that they need, so that we get all of the great titles. Because I don't think it's right that it's going to be dominated by like five companies who's been doing this since the 70s. I love what indie is bringing to the industry and to the market. And that's why I started the company, is because I so believe for these sort of the smaller victories, being able to do 1,000 print runs for someone who's never had a game coming out, it's such a huge win. And I want to continue doing that.
I love it. And sadly, we run out of time today. But before we go, we want to make sure that we get all your information. Let us know how we can sign up for your workshops and your consultations. Let us know all the deets.
Yeah, so our website is Dinasaidso Studio.com. We can be booked through there directly, even either for calls or just like check-ins. I also run on socials. You can find me on all of the platforms. Dina said so. I made it my job to be very easy to find. If you're interested in any of the workshop that we're running, we sort of will announce them every now and then we'll find a group so we make it affordable for people. So typically, I wait until I have at least 15 people available who's interested in a specific workshop before we run larger groups for like on be it TikTok or how to set up your website. But we also have a lot of material available for people who just want to sit and learn in their own process. So we got an ebook available that you just email me and I'll send it over.
Any last words before we leave today, Miss Ramsey?
I think that if you should have any last words, it is to make sure that you find time and space to be good and loving with yourself, because I think that we all deserve that. And if that is to sit down with a good book and a podcast, find the time to do that because you matter.
Absolutely. I love that advice. And with that, ladies, today's meeting is now adjourned. Thanks again to Dina Ramsey of Dinasaidso Studios for coming on and offering all her insights. Be sure to subscribe to About Her Business wherever you receive your podcast so you never miss an upload. Also, leave me some comments down in that comment section on which industry you think I should interview next. Until next time, keep those goals tight, those circles tighter, and those bank accounts growing.